Where are those guys? We were supposed to start recording 10 minutes ago. Oh, here he comes. Tanner Campbell, one of Podcast Magazine's top 22 podcast influencers.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Hey, Tanner, you ready to record the first episode of Podcast Garage? Why are you looking at me like that? You don't remember me, do you?
You're you.
Oh my God, you really don't. I'm Greg, creator of Indie Drop-In Network and the co-host of this show with you and the podcast father. Still nothing? Okay, well, the studio's in the back. We'll get started when Jeff gets here. Oh, finally.
I'm your host, Jeff, a.k.a. Podcast Father.
Oh, not you too. We're recording the first episode of Podcast Garage, and you're a co-host along with me and Tanner. Just go ahead and go back to the studio. Here, take these papers with you. We're talking to Marc Binder. I don't know how you say it. Maybe you can ask him. He's starting a new podcast hosting platform. Geez, well, I guess I better get in there. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special segment of Indie Podcaster and the first episode of Podcast Garage. Podcast Garage is a show where we talk to creators of all kinds and help them get to the next level of their podcast journey. Like Kramer said, it's all about the levels. Jeff, a.k.a. the podcast father, why don't you get us started?
All right, this is going to be a fun episode of Indie Podcaster. Hit it, ladies.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
You've been searching for a podcast. Want to know about some great artists? You've come to the right place. Indie Podcaster with your host, the podcast father.
This is going to be an awesome episode. We've got a great team here. We've got Marc. How the hell do you say your name? Marc is the founder of your new podcast hosting platform, Podtrics. How do you say your last name, Marc? I don't want to...
Actually, I kind of want to hear you guess. It's kind of a game for me.
Can we all do that?
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's Bender.
You're close, but no.
Binder.
Yeah, that's what the computer says, but no.
I was going to go with Binder, too.
Welcome, Marc Binder.
It's actually Binder. Basically like a 3-ring binder. There's a group chat that I'm in, and it's just my face with a bunch of like cartoon 3-ring binders plastered all over the thing. It's kind of funny, but no, Marc Binder, and yeah.
So Marc is here. We're going to be asking him some questions. By we, I mean Tanner Campbell from Podcasting Sucks. And then we also have the sponsor here of this episode. It's Greg. Old Greg from Indie Drop-In.
Hello, hello.
So before we kick things off, we only have to do it the right way. Let's just get the sponsor of this awesome bonus episode going here. Tell us about yourself, Greg. Tell us what you offer, pal.
Yeah, so if you're a true crime, paranormal, scary, or comedy podcaster and you're looking to grow your show, you can submit an episode to Indie Drop-In. We will play the full episode of your show to an embedded base of listeners looking for your content. Then, if they like you, they'll follow you. And guess what? It's 100% free. I actually pay Tanner and Jeff to get your content. If you can believe that. I don't know how I got roped into being the creator of Indie Drop-In, but I will like to promote your show. How was that, Jeff?
That's good. Tanner, what do you think?
I think you did a better job than I do.
Definitely does a better job than I do. I can hardly even talk.
Yeah. Well, no, I think you do a great job. I've heard your ads so many times that now I just replay them in my head. But for anyone interested in submitting a show, just go to indiedropin.com/creators. Just follow the form and I'll take it from there.
Slide it on in. It's that easy. This is going to be an awesome episode. Marc, you reached out to me and you wanted to kind of get in front of an audience of some podcasters, content creators, and talk about what you've created really while you're finishing up college and now you just recently graduated. So you wanted to get in front of some people and talk about what you created and what services you offer.
Yeah, so I created Podtrics as kind of my senior project, but it ultimately was created in the long-term goal of making it be my business. Podtrics is your typical podcast hosting provider. Upload your audio, generate the RSS feed, submit it to iTunes, Spotify, Good Pods, you name it. From that, the system will start collecting the download metrics as people listen. You get to see the trend of how your content's performing over time. That's Podtrics in a nutshell. There's some things that, I kind of want to see in podcasting that either see change or improve or different takes on how I want to do things. But overall, that's essentially what Podtrics is doing.
What made you get into podcasting? I mean, what are some podcasts that you originally started out with that made you love it and really get into what you're doing now?
I've always been an audio guy. Music, radio, you name it. I'm a huge radio nerd to the point where I built my own online station. Been running it for about 5 or 6 years. It probably averages maybe 500 listeners a year. But I don't do it because I'm making money or because the people want it. I do it because it's what I like to do when I'm not doing anything. From that, I got into podcasting. The first podcast that I listened to was actually Smart Passive Income from Pat Flynn. Not because, Pat Flynn's the #1 podcast or anything. And literally a friend of mine said, hey, you should listen to this. You're always trying to start something. So I started listening to it, kind of expanded out, ballooned out. And then that was 4 or 5 years ago. Now, kind of the main thing that I'm listening to is the Art of Product podcast with Ben Ornstein and Derek Reimer. It's kind of my favorite one right now. From that, I kind of realized that while I'm not a content creator myself, I am an audio junkie. I am a software junkie. I like to write code for random things. And I kind of wanted to marry the two and figure out, okay, what's going on in podcasting that either is working and can be improved upon or is like fundamentally broken and just kind of needs a fresh take. Ultimately, the decision was, okay, let's meet everybody where they are right now in podcasting and then kind of pull things where I think that they should be going.
You landed on podcast hosting. Do you feel like podcast hosting is broken?
Actually, I think podcast hosting itself isn't broken. I like the open spec of RSS, how you're not tied into any one particular platform. I really like the decentralized nature of it at an experience level with somebody trying to get started in podcasting. You can't ask for a better medium than that because it's unopinionated. If you find an RSS feed and put it on your phone, suddenly you have a podcast on your phone. You don't have to go through the Apple platform to download. Now, it's easier to, as far as, starting to consume, but it's not a requirement. As far as podcast hosting goes, I really like this quote from Justin Jackson from Transistor. The same way that your website needs a home on the internet, so does your audio. Kind of the best way that I try to describe that is when you're streaming music on Spotify or Apple Music, that music is coming from a physical location. It's not just coming out of the void and, now I'm listening to the latest top hit song. It's living on a server. It's coming through the internet to your phone, and there it is. And that's kind of where Podtrics fits into this. It's the server where your audio is going to live.
Is Podtrics doing anything special that you feel that other podcast hosting providers are not doing?
The one thing that is kind of the flagship feature right now is user access control. I haven't seen this too many other places. I think Captivate is doing it, but I think they're the only one, where you can add a user to the system and by default, they will only have access to what you explicitly give them access to. So if you're a group of friends and you guys are going in on Podtrics together, but you guys kind of want to separate out the accidental, I accidentally deleted your entire show. The only person who can do that is the person who's been given explicit admin rights to that particular show. That's kind of where Podtrics is right now. I kind of want to see things go towards more automatic submission, maybe some marketing integrations with advertisers to where the advertisers will kind of come into Podtrics and surface, but that's more of I'm exploring that, kind of thinking about that. But right now I'm focused on kind of launching and getting enough users so that it can start supporting itself, as well as where I can start receiving feedback to make the product better.
Yeah, there's a value in that, I think. But as somebody who is a multi-time entrepreneur, mostly failed, somewhat successful, I will tell you that too many cooks in the kitchen can spoil the soup. So put that in a quote book and make sure you remember what your vision is, and don't lose that. Don't let anybody tell you you're wrong, unless you're technically wrong.
Oh, I've probably trashed 5 or 6 different paths for Podtrics just this week because I'm just like, in time, maybe, but right now, no.
I'm also interested in what you said, and then I will pass this over to Greg to talk about the marketing element of it, because I saw his eyes light up when you said marketing. When you say you want to work towards automatic submission, how did you mean that?
So it is not the job of the content creator to know every possible library out there, not to know how many iTunes there are, how many Spotifys there are. That's the job of the host. The host specializes in audio delivery, and part of delivery is reaching the libraries. Now, there's going to be some libraries to where it's not possible. iTunes is the biggest pain in the ass to get your stuff into. But once you're in there, you're good. But if, library XYZ comes on the market and they need content, well, Podtrics should become aware of that, add it into the system, and then it will just start submitting everything that has like open submissions turned on. It's not the job of the creator to know that library ABC came on the market and now I have to go add another thing. Their job is to create great content, not to be managing their infrastructure.
So I love the idea that you're going to try to get people away from focusing on things that are not the actual content creation. I talk about this a lot. I think that's good. But when you talk about automatic submissions like the ones you're talking about, how are you going to help the creators maintain control of those relationships? So this was a problem with Anchor early on when they would automatically submit your podcast to Apple Podcasts, or maybe what they at that point called iTunes. I can't remember how long ago that was. People would not be able to log in and see their metrics. They had to go through this special process. They had to retake ownership of that submission so that they actually owned it and could, if they wanted to, remove it. So how are you going to, and maybe this is the first time you're thinking about it because I'm asking it, but how do you plan on allowing people to control those relationships while you are the one who's doing the submission, or while the platform, Podtrics, is the one doing the submission?
Well, that is something I need to consider. Probably the easiest way that I can think of, and I'm in no way saying this is what I want to do, but maybe almost surface it in the UI saying, hey, we're aware of this thing and we're about to submit in 14 days, whatever. If you don't do anything, we're going to go ahead and do it unless you tell us otherwise. I don't know if that's what I'll do, but
I wonder if there's a way that, in the same way that when you test apps for deployment, Apple and Google, for example, will have their bots run bot tests to see whether or not these things work. I wonder if there's a way to construct a back-end infrastructure. I don't think any podcast provider does this. You could be the first. This could be the thing. This could be the thing that only Podtrics does. Maybe you could have a system in the background that created accounts on behalf of the users, made those submissions, and gave those credentials to the users so that both the system and the independent user could both have control of that relationship, and the user could use it whenever they want. I don't know what that looks like from an infrastructure standpoint, but I think it could be cool.
That's a daunting task that terrifies and excites me at the same time.
Those are the best tasks. Greg, marketing time, baby.
Oh, maybe I'll start with an easy one. Like, how has user acquisition been going for you? You said you've been, in business like 8 months, 6 months, something like that?
Publicly available since August of 2020. Not great. There's a reason I have a day job. I'm not going to get into actual numbers yet, just because I'm not at that point. But user acquisition and specifically user activation is a high priority right now. Partially because, again, this is a business and I want to get it off the ground, but also it's very hard to provide value to a very small number of people when those people are not wanting to give feedback.
So what kind of mechanisms are you using to attract users?
So right now, I am doing a lot of Google ads. Well, I say a lot. There's like 4 of them out there right now. But that's kind of been the primary and most successful way to bring in users. The problem with that right now is I've only been running Google ads for about a month and a half. Is 100% of the users that come from Google ads are not activating. So I'm looking at things like, is the ad copy, is the site, good or bad? As a result of that, I just completely redid the site's homepage specifically because it was kind of bland, kind of generic. And my goal for the site is for it to tell that story of you had an idea, you recorded with friends, you uploaded it to Podtrics, and then people started listening. That's kind of the 4-step narrative that I want to go through with Podtrics. You can put any provider in that 3rd step. If you uploaded to Podtrics, you uploaded to Transistor, Captivate, whatever. The point is you uploaded it and now people have the ability to start listening. So right now, as a part of the user acquisition, is kind of telling that story of relating to where you are. You had the idea, cool. Let's start there. Or maybe you recorded your episode, cool. Let's start there. It's finding that place to meet the creator in a meaningful way, and it's not easy to do because you can totally think one thing and have it not be the case at all.
Now, do you consider activation signups, or what is your term for activation?
So acquisition is signups. They have created their account. Activation is they have begun their trial. And that's kind of two different steps, because I do require a credit card up front to start your trial, but it does not charge you until your trial expires. And if you cancel before the end of the trial, it will not charge you at all. I've put, verbiage there saying that, hey, we're not going to charge you until the trial expires. But there's that certain level of aversion of, I don't want to put this in here, my card information in, unless I'm 100% sure. That's kind of sparked some debate. I bounce a lot of this off of my brother because he's not a podcasting guy. So he kind of has that outside view, which is very helpful. He goes, well, what if you removed the credit card requirement up front? I'm like, okay, yeah, I could see that. And that's something I am actually kind of seriously considering.
I would stop thinking about that. I would do that. I think your brother's right about that.
I'm not thinking about doing it or not doing it. I'm more thinking about, how does the system, what's the first step for the system to allow me to remove that?
One thing to note is he just moved out of his college dorm. I do want to mention that. But the second thing to note is you are doing something by having this chat with us, right? Because you know that podcasters listen to this podcast. So that's also one thing that you're doing right now.
Yeah. I was hoping, Jeff, that you would point that out. I was hoping the very next thing he said was, I'm going on all these shows about, podcasting, about, tech, anything that has any sort of overlap whatsoever, because this is the market that you're trying to reach. This show is perfect for your market. So I guess the question I would ask, and you're still very early on, and you've already done more than out 90% of people who graduate with software degrees. In my line of work, all I hear about are what people are going to do. And you've done it. You have a product up, you're refining it to get user activations, which is what the stage that you're at, which is a completely different stage than I'm gonna do anything, right? So I give you total kudos for that. That's super cool. I would say, not that you're asking my advice, but what I would do is I would probably just make sure your MVP checks the basic boxes of what a podcaster needs in order to host. I would just make sure that you've done that research. I would find a couple of podcasters and give your service away to them for free and see if they'll mentor you and be your podcasting eyes and ears. I mean, I talk to Tanner and Jeff about these wild ideas I have all the time, because even after doing this for, a decade, I still get in my own head, right? So those are my two, and I'll hand it over to Jeff. It's his show. But those are maybe my two. If I were to say next steps, I would get yourself a couple of podcast mentors, and I would go through the MVP checklist and just make sure that all your check marks are green. And then you can go, we'll see if your conversions change. And as you're starting to check these boxes, I suspect that people are going to the free sites which don't check all the boxes. Let me just be perfectly clear. They go to the free sites and they don't check all the boxes. They look at your site and maybe you don't check all the boxes, but they're different boxes. And they're just saying, oh, well, maybe I'll go with the free one for now. And if it works for me, then I'll pay later. So just my 2 cents that's worth less than 2 cents.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, that's more information than I had an hour ago. So I'm always of the opinion of what can I learn?
And I guarantee you that there are at least 10 people listening to this right now who probably haven't started and would absolutely take you up on, free hosting for the first year and be willing to accept that, okay, I'm not going to get all the bells and whistles that Captivate might offer. I'm not going to get, the sexiest embedded player, but I'm going to get the hosting, and I need that, and the metrics will come, and I can help shape this. I mean, one of the reasons that I host with Timber.fm is for that exact reason. I left Captivate to host with Timber because they are doing what you're doing. They're trying to build something different, and they needed people to help inform them on how the best way was to do that and give feedback. And I'll bet there are people listening to this podcast right now who would do that for you 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that's the case, I'm sure we can put this in the show notes, but email me, hello@podtrics.com is the easiest way to send me an email. My name's kind of difficult to spell, so hello is a little bit easier.
You should just make a version of your email that's Marc Binder. Spelled that way. You really should. That's an alias, buddy.
Yeah, okay, all right. Marc Binder just marc@podtrics.com. Yeah, there it is. I'll have that set up by the time this goes live.
I think this is an awesome discussion. This is like raw and this is in the moment, right? Like this is awesome for you, especially taking it all in. I know. And yeah, everything will be in the show notes. You don't have to worry about that. I do want to ask you a few technical questions, though. The podcasting 2.0, that's what we're hearing all about lately, right? And we have been. Spec-wise, how are you going to match up? Are you going to support that?
So my understanding of what podcasting 2.0 is it's these like additional namespaces, where it's like got the iTunes or the Android prefix in the RSS. Yes, it is supported. It's predefined field supported. So it's all of the iTunes prefixes are supported. Maybe not all of them are in the feed right now, or it's coming. That's kind of where podcasting 2.0 is right now.
On the subject matter of anything similar to this at all, Tanner, what do you have?
I mean, you just said you've got some of the tags are already implemented. Some of them are coming. I know that 2.0 is working its butt off to add new namespaces and that it's always evolving. So I imagine that you have a plan to keep up with that as they come, as new namespaces come and new tags come. So no, I don't think I have anything more for that. I think
the only issue that I'm running into with keeping up with the namespaces is finding like a central place to be like watching.
Oh, I think that's podcastindex.org, isn't it? They've got links to the GitHub there and all.
Oh, sweet. Cool. I will have to double check that.
Then there's a, what do they call it? There's a chat server that you can join. Something.
Oh, Mastodon.
It's a Mastodon. Yeah, there's a Mastodon that you can join. And I would suggest that you be very active there because, that whole community loves the grassroots podcast host, podcast app. They love it.
Don't tell them I sent you. Don't ever say my name in that space.
Yeah, you just found it via the internets.
I found it online.
But one thing you could do, like if you're looking for like a feature list, right, and you can't get feedback from your creators or whatever, you're still looking for your beta users that we've suggested, support the Podcast Index 2.0 because it's going to take you down a path of features you've never thought of. Like, how are you going to do transcripts? There's a transcript metadata that goes with the RSS feed. There's chapter support. There's all sorts of things, and they clearly define it with how to do it. It's not just putting it in the RSS feed as a tag, right? You have to support it in the back end so that the users can, drop a link to their transcript, or they can set up their Satoshi, pay for value thing. There's like you'll have to support the back end mechanisms so that they can, click the buttons, and then it goes into the RSS as a tag, and then it goes into the apps to be consumed. But there's a little community there where you can message even the app builders and test, create your test podcast, and who supports what. Jeff, it was a great thing to bring up because it's a built-in community that, they're nice to everyone except for Tanner.
Well, to be fair, I kind of swung at them first, so that's my own bad. But I would suggest that, especially if you're into that value for value, I think is what they call that. If you go to podcastindex.org and click on value for value in the top right-hand corner, you can learn more about that. If you were going to prioritize something in the back end, I think that would be a smart thing to prioritize. I think that's becoming more important to people as an alternative means of, or an additional means of monetization because it's right there. It's a very low barrier to, I'm not saying entry, but it's very easy to do. There's no friction there if you're using the player. Another reason that it would be a good idea to prioritize that is I can promise you that community and podcastindex.org and probably Pod News would be very excited to share a new host that was prioritizing those things. So it might get you some additional traction.
Exactly.
Because there are not a lot of hosts who are doing it.
It's interesting because value for value, from what I looked at, it looks like it's running on like Bitcoin or blockchain or something. And not to say that it would never happen with Podtrics, but I'm one of the Bitcoin blockchain skeptic people. Just
Adam Curry is going to shit his pants.
Yeah. Luckily, you don't have to be a blockchain fanboy because they just uses the blockchain to transport dollars across the internet. So it converts dollars to dollars on the other side. So yeah, nobody is getting Bitcoins in their wallets. They're getting money.
Okay. Yeah. It's, I don't know if it's because I don't think it's bad, but it's just one of those, like, I don't understand it. And if I don't understand something, I just by de facto becomes a skeptic of it. But that could just be from a lack of understanding. So
that comes with age, son.
That's how I work. That's why I hate so many things. I just don't understand them.
Yeah. That's called being cynical.
I'm 25 and I'm one of the most cynical people I know. So
welcome to podcasting. You fit right in.
Yeah, exactly.
Follow Tanner's lead. No, I think you... No, Greg did a good job there covering like the second part of that question, right? The feature part, because those are the things that We're hearing about the chapter markers, the transcript. I mean, all that stuff's really, really big. But in my opinion, this could just be me. Your bread and butter, I think Tanner said bread and butter, so I'm going to use that, is going to be what support can you provide? Everything that you're doing is going to ride on your hands-on approach and your relationship with people that are signing up for your service because of where you're at. Then you'll continue to grow, obviously, and improve your platform that you've created. But your big thing is going to be, and it should be, to what make you succeed, is the customer service and how involved you are with the customers. Anybody got to disagree with that one?
Somebody actually just said something very similar to me about Pisma, so I'm interested to hear what Marc says here.
My whole thing when it comes to customer support is it has to be in-house. It has to be one of the highest priorities. My approach to customer support is surprise and delight across the board. Whether that be, hey, I didn't know I'm looking for this thing. Can we do it? Absolutely, we already do it. Or it doesn't do it now, but let's have that open discussion of how would this work? That's my approach to customer support. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to, there might be some long hours once you get going in your server room, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the day job that you have now, they're supportive of what you're doing. They're aware of what you're doing.
Oh, yeah, they know about it. I told them about it in my interview, and it was actually, my boss told me it's one of the key reasons why he hired me, because it was also very entrepreneurial.
The reason that I asked that question is you're in a very advantageous position. You didn't do what I did, for example, which was quit my day job and just jump right into running my first business way back in, goddamn, I think it was 2008. And that was a mistake for me because that first business failed, as you might expect that it would. But you have a full-time income. You're no longer in school. You're young. You're a vibrant dude. You're like ready to take on any challenge you can get. And you don't need this to be financially successful, which puts you in a very unique position, very advantageous position you can take your time with it. You can offer the services for free. Can I ask, and you don't have to answer this on air if you don't want to, what is the overhead of running Podtrics?
To run and operate just Podtrics itself, because I have a couple other things that I do, but to run Podtrics right now, it costs anywhere from $100 to $200 a month to operate, not to advertise, not to do any of this extra stuff, but to operate.
And this, of course, scales with each user you have. It goes up a little bit.
Depending on a few factors. What could make the cost go up would be bandwidth. The costs that are going to stay relatively static, unless, of course, you exceed it, it's going to be the server cost. Like the servers are kind of running at a static number right now, but of course that could go up as the product scales. But anywhere between $100 to $200 a month, just kind of depending on different things that month.
Now, what do you have as far as cost controls? When a podcaster moves over, if they've got 150 episodes already, let's say, and they're migrating over, you might instantly use 500 gigs of your storage, which I'm sure you're in a cloud paying, 10 cents a gig or whatever it is, right? So then, what if it's a big show? Like my show, I'll just tell you on AWS alone, just in bandwidth charges is $70 a month for my show alone, just me. And that's why Captivate, like if I moved to Captivate, they'd be like, hey, the 15,000 downloads a month, that's not for you, buddy. That's for someone else. I would say, what controls do you have as far as tiers so that you can make sure that the people who use the cost, that generate the cost, pay the fees?
Yeah, so the way that there's 3 tiers right now, basic, plus, and premium, and they are currently capped at 10, 100, 150 respectively. Now those numbers were pulled out of my butt.
Gigs? Downloads, okay.
You good there, Tanner?
Yeah, he means, first of all, pulled out of your butt. I love that. And also, he means 10K, 100K, and 150K, not 10, 100, and 150. Downloads, Greg.
I would hope so.
Yeah, we assume that, Tanner.
Oh, yeah, $19 for 10 downloads. That's a great idea.
Thanks for clarifying, though.
The look on Greg's face was not good.
Yeah. No, 10,000 downloads, 100,000 downloads, and 150,000 downloads, respectively. When you reach the maximum that your tier offers, it does have kind of one-off exceptions. So, like, you can go over, I think right now it's set to like 5% 1 month, and it doesn't care. It's like, okay, you went over 5%. It was a fluke. not going to penalize you for that. That's how it is right now. Not going to say that, it's going to be that way in forever.
What an awkward conversation that would be. Hey, you were really popular this month, but that doesn't normally
Luckily,
happen.
we price based on 95th percentile because this month you're sucking.
Yeah.
But the thing is like, if you went over by, let's use 100,000 for simple math. You have 100,000 downloads permitted per month, and you do 105,000 downloads this month. Next month, you're back to like kind of your 97 mark. Cool. But if you'd had like 2 months in a row where you're at 105, on that second month is when we would upgrade you automatically, saying, hey, your show is growing. Congratulations. That means that this tier is no longer a good fit for you. We've moved you up to the next one. And we'll give them the heads up before we do that in that first month, saying, hey, you did 105,000 downloads. Your account typically allows for 100,000. Not a problem this month, but if it happens again next month, that's when we'll do it. And it's going to be kind of the back-to-back month, not the second time it happens ever in the life of the account. Because podcasting, it fluctuates. You have a really popular episode that people really, really liked. So a lot of people shared it, which means a lot of people listened to it. Tanner, you're shaking your head no, so you don't?
Well, not for him.
No,
but
nobody likes my shows.
But it exists in the world, we think.
It exists.
None of us have seen it, but it's there.
Yeah.
We swear.
the elusive golden episode. But you shouldn't be penalized because you're successful. That the whole point of using a system like Podtrics is to enable that success. And if the system suddenly starts penalizing you for being successful, that's a problem. But if you have outgrown a particular tier, there's that balancing act between enabling you to be successful and Podtrics somebody has to pay this bill. So the idea there is let them have their spurts of success. But if it becomes an ongoing thing, that means they're becoming more successful. They're getting more value out of the system. So it's time to move them up.
So I think there are some other cost controls that you may be able to introduce. But first, let me ask if you have them. Do you limit the file type that they are allowed to upload? And do you limit the bit rate, the kilobit per second of those MP3 files, for example, to control for the, you don't want somebody uploading 300 kilobit per second. Maybe only 128 would be okay.
Yes, we do limit the file type that can be uploaded. Right now, you can only upload MP3 files. If you're importing, which I'm going to say this up front, importing is not done yet. It's in the works, but it's not ready. If you're importing, it will allow for the WAV file, and it will keep the WAV file. I see your face there. I should kill that. All right.
You should kill that. Yes. Yeah, because I think at 128, a minute of audio is a megabyte, just give or take. But a wave, a minute of audio is like a lot more than that.
I'm going to kill that tonight.
Yeah, that's a big risk to cost, I think. I mean, am I wrong about that, Greg? I'm pretty sure a wave is like 10 megs a minute. It's pretty big.
Yeah, depending on the quality and how it's encoded, it can get pretty big. But I would say it's risky, especially when you're talking about hundreds of dollars worth of cost, right? And you don't have millions of dollars where that could be diluted in your costs. But yeah, I mean, you might want to think about offering a converter, like maybe bring them in and bring those episodes in and set them to private so that a customer can download their WAV file and convert it to MP3 and re-upload it, or maybe give them a button to convert it. Converters, or there's millions of them out there.
I'm looking into code libraries that can kind of run these conversions for me, or APIs that can run these conversions for me. Because the whole idea is that if I'm introducing new steps to the creator, they're spending more time managing their podcast than creating their podcast. Like I said, with the balancing act of success versus running the business, I have to balance the features between managing the podcast and creating the podcast.
I wouldn't add friction on a migration. Like I wouldn't stall it, but I would probably give a bunch of errors. Like if the whole thing is WAV, which is insane.
And right, that's not going to happen. Like nobody's doing that.
Yeah. Like an Apple premium show or something is all WAV, but likely it's going to be the one out. Like people submit shows to me and I get one every 100 that's a WAV file or a WMA file or something weird, right? So you just have to, I think, have some UI error checking and go, hey, we're going to bring this over. I'm going to download it. It's going to cost me, 16 cents to bring this file over, but you're not going to be able to press play on it until you run through the conversion, which, do you want to do it? Yes or no? And most of the time, podcasters at this level, they're not going to know anything anyway. So you just say yes.
Right. And I maybe wouldn't even ask them. I mean, they have the original file. They're not losing anything. You're not corrupting something by doing the conversion automatically. And I think the only podcast genre that would fight you on this would be one that was specifically focused on music or an audio drama that required very high quality audio. Because in most cases, like sometimes I'll publish my episodes at 192. When I do my storytelling episodes, I put them up at 192. Really not necessary. Not really. I could probably get away with 128, and most people could get away with 96. There is some advice out there that 64 is reasonable, but if you introduce music into a 64 kilobit per second MP3, then you can actually hear that difference. You have to be an audiophile to hear that difference. So
all my stuff is 192, but I'm in the same boat. I only do it because I can, and I've got a publisher account with Spreaker, so I don't have any limits. But yeah, you're absolutely right. One thing to keep in mind is Buzzsprout, one of the world's largest hosts, modifies every file.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you can upload junk and it'll turn into a beautiful, 128K MP3 in mono, right? And if you want 192, you have to add on their premium package to get 192.
Mm-hmm.
So you wouldn't be the only host out there to modify audio.
Yeah, that was my hesitation. I didn't want to create adverse effects for the creator. So even like you asked earlier about the bit rate, I don't think it scales it down, which is something that I'm going to have to look at, especially because of the scary conversation that we just had.
Yeah, I wouldn't change every MP3 like Buzzsprout. I think you need audio engineers. You need somebody like Tanner to really consult with you to figure out exactly what to do and when to do it. But I would say if it's a WAV file, you're within your rights to convert it to an MP3 and maybe just save the WAV file for them to download later or something.
Okay.
And you could build logic into the submission process so that it could check those values of the file and would just tell you at the point of upload, no, this is not an MP3 file.
Yeah, I do have that when they go to upload the file. If they go to upload it and it's anything other than an MP3, it'll say no. Now, those checks are not on the import. It has to be an MP3 or a WAV. Anything else, it would fail because I don't want the importing to fail.
Yeah, that's a new customer. You want to get them. You want them to move.
Right, exactly. Like we said, it is an early stage product, so there's a lot of management on the back end on my side that I need to work out. It's all functional, it's all working, but it's the fine tuning of, hey, when this edge case happens, do this. When this edge case happens, do that. And if this thing happens, let me know immediately because I need to get involved. Which that's kind of one of those, like, I get emails at 2:00 in the morning when something goes wrong.
Jeff, what do you think we can do here as far as the listeners are concerned to encourage them, if they haven't started, to reach out to Marc and see if they could be some of his, 1 year free users to help him grow?
I think just testament to the fact that the three of us are having this conversation with him. Well, Greg, I threw him the curveball last minute, but Tanner and I have been talking about it for, I don't know, a week. I don't know, even probably not a week, but several days. Like you and wanted to help you, and we think it's awesome what you're doing as far as taking this risk of starting a business, what you're doing. To me, that is the first step to doing anything in life or content creation or anything. So just the fact that we have you on here just shows that we would like for listeners to at least give it a shot. And that's how it's just like with anything else. Like, you give people a shot. Greg will use their episode, or Tanner will bring them on and chat with them. Somebody has to have a certain point of help in the beginning. And I think that's what our call to action is right here. Would be a handful of people believe in Marc, what he's doing, just giving him a shot. And I don't think it's not much to lose. I mean, I think Marc's going to be a great customer support person, and that's going to be where he's going to begin, and he's going to continue to grow just like all of us podcasters do every day.
I agree with that. I think a lot of life is who you know, not what you know. And for a beginning podcaster to get to know you, Marc, at the beginning of your journey and their journey is a lasting relationship that will probably take you both places that you never dreamed of. I mean, Tanner, how many people do you know from the beginning that have just totally changed your career in podcasting? Lots.
Yeah, a lot. I think on the business side, probably hundreds, and on the podcasting side, student side, thousands. So, and those people are still in contact with me. They still feel comfortable reaching out to me. I still feel good that I can help them. Or if they're on the business side, it feels really good to be able to reach out to somebody who's got, 20 years more experience than I do and has already been through some things that I'm now just going through for the first time. For example, who you know is more important than what you know might be a statement that some people would be like, oh, that sounds like you just get connections and you get to cheat the system. But that's not really what Greg means or what people mean when they even say that. It just, when you make good relationships with people, they remember that. And when opportunities come up, they think of you or you think of them. And there's a huge benefit to that, especially in business. It's probably, that will do more good for you in your young entrepreneurial career than pretty much anything you can learn in a book. The relationship marketing is a real thing.
And yeah, relationship networking. Because I've been creating content off and on for over 15 years now, but the last really 9 months have been all built off of a community on Twitter, right? And I think, I'm not saying I found Tanner, but when I stumbled across Tanner on Twitter, recently on Twitter, right, Tanner, you haven't been on there super long.
No, I think I joined about 4 months ago, yeah.
Yeah, we were able to build a network and build a bit of a relationship. And I was able to introduce some people, some podcasters to him, and they've found a lot of great value in that. And I think, Greg's another example of that. I've never claimed to be the know-all of everything. Don't let the nickname confuse you. That's not what it means. To me, it's about what we're doing now. I want to help people and give back. And that's what we're doing here. So I think, like, to everybody's point here, it's all about networking in the beginning. Mark's at the beginning of his journey, and a lot of other people are. It'll be about coming together and supporting each other, and that's the creator part of the community, as Tanner always talks about. That's the beautiful thing about the creator part of the community. It's just about coming together and supporting each other at this point of what I'm doing, and I think this is just a great example of that with this recording session that we've done here.
I completely agree.
So Marc with a C, Binder with an EI, or just binderboy at podtrics.com, I think is going to be the email address you're going to set up, right?
Yeah, just Marc, MARC at podtrics.com, PODTRICS. You can misspell it a few different ways. I'll still get it. Either side of the @ sign, I'll still get it. Yeah. And so what I'm willing to do for anybody who's listening, if you want that free year, just shoot me an email. Or if you guys feel uncomfortable getting something for free and want to support Podtrics, use the promo code PODFATHER at checkout, and you'll get 25% off for that 12-month period.
Well, Marc and the rest of the gang, Tanner and Greg, I appreciate everybody taking a little bit out of their evening and coming together here and helping Marc out and having a great conversation about podcasting.
Thanks for having us, Jeff.
It was fun.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this bonus episode of Indie Podcaster and the first episode of Podcast Garage. You can subscribe to Podcast Garage everywhere you listen to podcasts. We will put all the links to everything we talked about in the show notes below. You can find Tanner on his podcast, Podcasting Sucks, and you can find me on my podcast, Podcast Creators. See you next time.